that's a work in progress, and that sort of dovetails with another thing here of your Dave Sim effed up thing of I just had that happen 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. I faxed Eddie Kana my commentaries on Strange Death of Alex Raymond. I can usually get about 4 or 5 pages done a day, and I did do a commentary on the Caged Songbird storyline and made a major mistake of I had transcribed something from the storyline that I think I was talking to you about last time, that Ward Green, when he was putting in autobiographical thing, would use 2 dot ellipses because that's Morse code for I.
Right.
And I was going through the list of those, and I had one where I thought he had written Mr. Dorp instead of Mr. Van Dorp, and was making a point of why I thought this was autobiographical, that he left out the van. And then it turned out that, no, I had transcribed it incorrectly. I went back and checked in the collected book, and there it was. It said Van Dorp, which was really strange because the Heritage Auctions catalog came in that day, and it had the original artwork for that strip in the back, which one of those weird comic art metaphysics moments. So what I told Eddie is, anytime that there is a mistake like that, we want to lead with that. Whatever section that those commentaries go in, that goes up at the top saying this was a mistake that Dave Sim made, and not correcting the mistake because it hasn't actually gone out there. No, if I've actually typed it into the commentaries, then I think there's a level of dishonesty to fixing the mistake as if it was never there, or just letting it be buried somewhere in the text and let's see if anybody notices this. No, if I make a mistake, I definitely want the mistake highlighted and headlined. So, because I think one of the things is there are going to be mistakes. I don't think any human being can do a mistake-free creative work. It's made up stuff.
Right.
If you're making stuff up, then the odds are that you're going to be able to flawlessly make stuff up. Seems really, really so unlikely as to be completely over into the impossible. And I don't think I've ever claimed that Cerebus was a flawless work, or even a work with few flaws in it. I think that text in itself is what we really have is scripture. That's the flawless text in terms of witness and testimony. This is why it exists, is to keep the record straight of, okay, this is how everything happened. That's my interpretation of it. And it took a long time. It took centuries and centuries for anybody to even consider creating text that wasn't scriptural. I think exactly the reason that we see in our society if you just let people write whatever they want to write, you get over into really, really dangerous areas very, 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 very quickly. And then before you know it, Scripture has been completely elbowed out of the way in favor of stuff that people wanted to make up. So I'm always, I keep those things completely separate in my life. There's Scripture, and then there's commentary. I mean, I comment on Scripture. And then there's made-up stuff. And it's like, I'm pretty careful to know the difference on that. I don't talk about books that I've read as if they're in the same category as the Bible. The Bible is the Bible. Commentary on the Bible is what it is. And made-up stuff is what made-up stuff is. And that sort of dovetails into, we were talking about the commentaries on the Genesis question.
Right.
That it just runs out at the middle of February. And yeah, it definitely does. That was Dr. Troy in Texas, my major patron on the 2012 Kickstarter, where we offered $10,000, and Dave Sim will come and stay at your house and do a picture on your wall. And Dr. Troy went for it, and didn't want me to do a picture on his wall, but he did want to videotape me talking to his minister, who was John Burke at the time. And that was a situation where I was happy to do that. And then his minister, John Burke, gave me a copy of his book, Soul Revolution, and I read that, and figuring, well, okay, $10,000 is a lot of money, $10,000 US, so I will comment on Soul Revolution and send my commentaries on Reverend Burke's book to Reverend Burke and to Dr. Troy, and never heard back from either of them. That was one of my Sabbath observances. Every Sunday, I would write about 5 or 6 pages of commentary, and then Dr. Troy sent me the Genesis question book in 2013, and it's like, well, okay. I guess I'll comment on this, and mostly making the point that why I don't think YHWH and God can be the same being, and this is a recurring motif in any of the scriptural commentaries that I do. So I did the scriptural commentaries on the Genesis question and Soul Revolution, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, and then in the middle of writing all of that, that was when my wrist went wonky. So I didn't know if that was, okay, I'm not supposed to be doing this. I don't know why I didn't know why I was supposed to be doing this, but if Dr. Troy's going to send me the book in the mail and I'm going to read it and I'm going to comment on it. So basically I just stopped doing it. But that's one of those do write commentaries. The Bible comes up reasonably often in the course of reading Rip Kirby. Ward Green definitely had a background in the Bible and theology. He went completely over to the other side, over into the dark occult side, as far as I can see. But he did have a background in it, so his references are very specific. But me commenting on the Bible, commenting on what I see here, and going into considerable depth of using Strong's Concordance to figure out, okay, what is the actual Hebrew term here, and where does it come from, and what are the 10 or 12 different meanings that it can have, which can definitely change what is the traditional translation of it to, okay, I think this is probably a more accurate translation because there's an androgynous female connotation to the term that I think is the reason that the YHWH is using that term, because YHWH to me is he, she, it, which, LGBTQ on a different level, and that's planet Earth. That's what we're reading when we're reading the Lord says, and the Lord tells the Hebrew people to do this. So I do that, but I also spend a considerable amount of time just reading Scripture aloud, because what I see in Scripture and how I interpret Scripture to me is on a much, 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 much lower level than just reading Scripture aloud from the Bible, from the Quran, from my English translation of the Quran, or my interlinear Greek scriptures. I think it's Scripture is really all that we've got, and that's why I avoid going over into the Scripture thing. I mean, the Scripture commentary exclusively thing. The thing that drives me crazy about a church sermon is the priest or the minister wants to talk for 15 minutes about, something that happened to him this week, and then we'll touch on a verse of Scripture. It's like, I really think Scripture is a lot more important than what happened to you when you were sitting stuck in traffic for a couple of hours last Tuesday and this funny thing happened. It's like, why don't you know the difference? Why don't you know that Scripture is on this elevated level, and what you have to say about it is way down here? So it's interesting that all of this is sort of interconnected in this weird way. But that tends to happen as well.
Well, that's something I thought about the other day, was with the strange death of Alex Raymond. That, I mean, I know you're doing a lot of research, and it's this never-ending rabbit hole of, you found something, and you went for more information about it, and then that leads to something else, which leads to something else, and I'm like, I wonder if this is going to turn into the this giant holistic thing where it's all interconnected.
Well, I think it is. I mean, I see it as God's immaculate clockwork mechanism. It's just an unimaginably large clock. We're just we're enacting things over and over again, and the more you gravitate gravitate to Scripture, and the more that you focus on Scripture, the thing of reading Scripture aloud, so it's coming out of your mouth, it's going in your ears, it's coming in your eyes, it's circulating in your brain. That's the closest that you can get to God's clockwork mechanism, as opposed to, watching the Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston or something like that. It's the one is actually part of the clockwork mechanism, and the other is somebody who doesn't know how to build a watch, going, that looks like fun, I want to do that. It all does seem to be interconnected, and you just get glimmerings of it. You see, wow, this actually is linked to that. This actually is connected to that. Particularly when I'm doing the commentaries, because if I'm doing Alex Raymond commentaries, I have to explain it on paper. I have to explain, well, not on paper, but on a word processor, explaining it exactly the way that I see it, which involves like writing it all out and then going back to the beginning and reading through and going, okay, I'm not explaining this to myself thoroughly enough for me to understand it, so I don't think anybody else is going to understand it. And I have to find sharper and sharper ways to explain what it is that I think that I'm seeing here. And it does seem to me like the best use of my time. But at the same time, you've got to go, well, you've also got to figure out a way to make a living here. You've got to bring in money on this.